The emergency alarms echoed through the halls of the research facility on Centauri Prime. Red lights flashed everywhere, casting eerie shadows on the ancient alien artifacts lining the walls. Zara Chen, a junior archaeologist with messy black hair and tired eyes, rushed to pack the most valuable pieces into secure containers. Warning: void swarm detection in nearby space. All personnel must evacuate immediately, the AI's calm voice announced overhead for the 10th time that hour. Zara wiped sweat from her forehead as she carefully wrapped a strange crystal tablet in protective foam. At 26, she was the youngest member of the research team, but today she was alone in the facility. Everyone else had already evacuated when the first warnings came 3 days ago. Just 5 more minutes, she muttered, knowing she was pushing her luck. The void swarm had already consumed 2 nearby systems in the past month. These biomechanical horrors didn't leave anything behind. Not even bacteria survived their hunger. As she reached for the last artifact, her hand brushed against a dusty corner of the shelf. Something clicked, and a hidden compartment popped open. Inside lay a small metallic disc that seemed to glow with a faint blue light. Zara's eyes widened. This wasn't in any of their catalogs. She quickly scanned it with her wrist computer, and strange symbols appeared on her screen. They weren't like anything she'd seen before in her years of studying ancient alien languages. The building shook violently. Through the window, she could see debris from the planet's defense satellites falling through the atmosphere like shooting stars. Final warning: void swarm vessels entering the system. All personnel must evacuate now. This is not a drill. Zara stuffed the mysterious disc into her pocket and grabbed her containment unit. Her boots echoed against the metal floor as she ran toward the landing pad where her small research ship waited. The sky had turned an ugly purple color, a sign that the void swarm was getting closer. Their presence always distorted local space, creating weird atmospheric effects. In orbit, she could see the massive Confederation evacuation ships jumping away one by one, carrying thousands of refugees. Just as she reached her ship, her wrist computer beeped. The mysterious disk was emanating some kind of signal, and her computer had finally decoded part of it. What she saw made her freeze in place. They weren't alien symbols at all. They were human numbers, ancient human numbers, from before the Confederation era, and they formed coordinates. "This can't be right," she whispered, double-checking the readings. According to her computer, these coordinates pointed to a location deep in unexplored space, but the most shocking part was the date stamp, 2487 CE. That was over 2,000 years ago, during humanity's mysterious lost period, before they joined the Confederation. Another explosion rocked the ground. Zara jumped into her ship and started the engines. As she lifted off, she looked back at the research facility, where she'd spent the last 3 years. The building was already beginning to crumble as the planet's defense grid failed. In orbit, her ship's AI automatically plotted a course to the nearest safe zone, but Zara hesitated. Everyone knew that humanity's early history was full of gaps. Most records from before the Confederation era were lost or destroyed. But here in her pocket was something that survived, something that might be important enough that ancient humans had hidden it in an alien ruin. Taking a deep breath, she overrode the AI's course. Instead of following the evacuation fleet, she punched in the ancient coordinates. Her small ship turned and accelerated away from the dying Centauri system, carrying its lone passenger toward whatever secret humanity had buried in the depths of space. Behind her, the void swarm began its feast, breaking down an entire civilization into raw materials. But for once, Zora wasn't thinking about the destruction. Her mind was focused on the disk in her pocket and the countless questions it raised. Why had humans left these coordinates? What would she find there? And most importantly, why had they hidden them in an alien ruin? After 3 days of travel through deep space, Zora's small research ship dropped out of hyperspace near a massive dark nebula. Her food supplies were running low, and she was beginning to wonder if following the mysterious coordinates had been a mistake. "Scanning area," her ship's AI announced. Warning: unusual energy signatures detected within the nebula. Zara leaned forward in her pilot's seat, studying the readings. Something big was hidden in that cloud of dark gas and dust. Before she could investigate further, her ship's communication system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Cathor of the Confederation Defense Fleet. You have entered a restricted zone. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. A massive Confederation warship appeared from behind the nebula, its weapons pointed directly at her small craft. Zara's hands shook as she activated her communication screen. The stern face of a Regellian admiral appeared, his blue-scaled skin and 4 eyes marking him as one of the Confederation's most respected military leaders. "This is junior archaeologist Zora Chen," she said quickly. "I found coordinates in an ancient ruin pointing to this location. I'm here on a research mission." Admiral Cathor's upper eyes narrowed. "You survived the fall of Centauri Prime." "Yes, sir. I found something there. Something human. The coordinates led here." There was a long pause. Finally, the Admiral spoke again. "Dock with our ship. We need to discuss this in person." 20 minutes later, Zara stood in a large conference room aboard the Confederation warship, the ancient disk laid out on the table before her. Admiral Cathor towered over her, all 4 of his eyes focused on the artifact. "We've been guarding this nebula for 3 months," he explained. "Our sensors detected something massive hidden within it, but we can't penetrate the interference to scan it properly." Zara picked up the disk. As soon as she touched it, it began glowing brighter than before. Suddenly, a hologram appeared above it, showing a series of numbers and symbols. "It's some kind of key," she said excitedly. "These look like activation codes." The Admiral pressed a button on the wall, bringing up a large view screen. "Watch this," he said, entering the codes into the ship's computer. The dark nebula in front of them began to shift and move. A massive section of space seemed to ripple, and something enormous appeared. Zara's jaw dropped. It was a space station, but unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was at least 50 kilometers long, built in a style that reminded her of ancient human architecture. But what really caught her attention were the ships. Hundreds of vessels floated in neat rows around the station, each one sleek and dangerous looking. They were clearly warships, but their design was completely foreign to her. "That's impossible," Admiral Cathor whispered. "Those ships, they're functional. Our scans show power readings, but the technology, we can't even understand how they're built." Before either of them could say more, the station's external lights began turning on, one section at a time. A new hologram appeared above the disk, this time showing words in ancient human English. "Twilight Fleet Facility activated. Welcome home, Chihya Eldorayan of Earth." The station's main hangar doors slowly opened, revealing even more ships inside. As they watched in amazement, a computerized voice spoke through both the disk and the ship's communication system. "I am Atlas, guardian of humanity's legacy. After 2,000 years of sleep, it's time to wake up. The Twilight Fleet awaits your command." Zara and Admiral Thor exchanged looks. They had just discovered something that would change everything. A fleet of ancient human warships, preserved and hidden away for centuries, waiting for the moment they would be needed again. "The question is," Admiral Cathor said quietly, "what exactly are these ships capable of?" The answer would turn out to be more incredible than either of them could have imagined. Admiral Cathor's warship docked with the ancient station, connecting to one of its massive hangar bays. As Zara stepped through the airlock, she noticed something strange. The air inside the station was perfectly fresh, as if the life support systems had never stopped working. Atlas's voice echoed through the station's halls. "Welcome aboard the Twilight Fleet Command Station. Please proceed to the main control room." Glowing lines appeared on the floor, creating a path for them to follow. Zara walked beside Admiral Cathor, both of them staring in amazement at their surroundings. The corridors were built on a huge scale, with smooth white walls that seemed to shine from within. "This technology," Cathor muttered, checking readings on his portable scanner. "It's nothing like what we use today. These power levels, they shouldn't be possible." They entered a massive circular room filled with holographic displays. In the center stood a glowing blue pillar of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The pillar flickered and transformed into the shape of a human woman wearing an ancient military uniform. "I am Atlas," the hologram said, smiling warmly. "I've waited a long time for human descendants to return. We have much to discuss, and very little time." Zara stepped forward. "What is this place? Why was it hidden?" "This station and its fleet were humanity's greatest achievement," Atlas explained. "Each ship contains a quantum neural network, a computer that thinks like a human brain. They can learn, adapt, and even create new strategies during battle." Admiral Cathor's 4 eyes widened. "That's impossible. Even our best AIs can't do that." "That's because you're trying to make machines think like machines," Atlas said. "These ships think like humans. They're unpredictable, creative, and able to understand things that can't be reduced to simple numbers and rules." Holograms appeared around them, showing ships from the fleet. Atlas continued. "Each vessel has a different personality, different strengths. They work together like a team, adapting their tactics based on what works and what doesn't. The technology was so advanced that even most humans didn't understand how it worked." "Then why hide them?" Zara asked. "Why not keep using them?" Atlas' expression turned sad. "Because humanity chose peace. After joining the Confederation, they worried these ships were too powerful. Instead of destroying them, they hid them away with me as their guardian, leaving clues in case they were ever truly needed again." The hologram waved a hand, and one of the nearby screens showed footage of the Void Swarm destroying worlds. "Now that time has come. The Swarm is unlike anything the Confederation has faced, but the Twilight Fleet was built to handle the impossible. How do we activate them?" Admiral Thor asked. "That's the challenge," Atlas replied. "The ships require genetic verification from human bloodlines, a safety measure to prevent misuse. Each ship needs different combinations of human DNA to fully activate. Right now, with just Zara's DNA signature, we can only wake up a small part of the fleet." Zara walked to one of the windows overlooking the docked ships. They were beautiful in a dangerous way. Sleek black hulls with lines of soft blue light running along their sides. "How many humans do we need?" she asked. "To activate the full fleet. At least 50 from different bloodlines. And we need them quickly. Based on my calculations, the Void Swarm will reach this sector in less than 2 months." Admiral Thor straightened his uniform. "Then we better start finding them. But first, show us what even one of these ships can do. The Confederation Council will need proof before they help us gather more humans." Atlas smiled. "Follow me to the testing area. It's time to wake up the first ship. I think you'll be surprised by what human technology was truly capable of." The Confederation Council chamber was packed with representatives from 100 different species. Zara felt small standing at the speaker's podium, but she kept her voice steady as she finished presenting her discovery. "The Twilight Fleet could be our best chance against the Void Swarm," she said. "We just need volunteers from different human bloodlines to activate more ships." The chamber erupted in shouting. A tall, insect-like hive lord stepped forward, his metallic wings clicking. "You expect us to trust ancient human weapons, weapons so dangerous that humans themselves chose to hide them." "Counselor," Admiral Thor interrupted, "I've seen these ships myself. Their power could turn the tide of this war." "Exactly," shouted a reptilian delegate. "Too much power. What happens after we defeat the Void Swarm? Will humans control these weapons forever?" More arguments broke out across the chamber. Some wanted to destroy the fleet, others wanted to claim it for their own species. A few even suggested that the Void Swarm was a better option than letting humans have such powerful weapons. Zara's wrist computer beeped with an urgent message. Her face went pale as she read it. "While we argue," she announced loudly, "the Void Swarm has just destroyed another system. The Proxima colony is gone. 10 billion people. Dead." The chamber went quiet. Admiral Thor used the silence to show footage from the ancient station. On the main screen, Hadlas demonstrated one of the fleet's ships destroying the simulated Void Swarm vessel. "These ships think like humans," Thor explained. "They can outmaneuver the swarm in ways our current ships can't. But they need human DNA to activate. That's a safety feature we can't bypass." An elderly human counselor stood up. Zara recognized him as Daniel Wu, one of the few human representatives. "You say these ships think like humans," he said slowly. "Does that mean they share our weaknesses, our emotions, our mistakes?" Atlas's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, making several delegates jump in surprise. "The ships have human creativity without human limitations," the AI explained. "They can think outside normal rules, but they can't disobey their core programming. They exist to protect, not to conquer." "The choice is simple," Zara added. "We can work together and use these ships to save billions of lives, or we can keep arguing until there's no one left to save." More discussions followed, but now they were quieter, more serious. Eventually, Council Speaker Vex, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, called for a vote. The results were close. 51% in favor of using the fleet, 49% against. The council would allow human volunteers to help activate the ships, but under strict supervision. As they left the chamber, Admiral Thor looked worried. They wasted too much time arguing. The Void Swarm is getting closer, and we still need to find enough humans with the right genetic markers. Zara's computer beeped again. This time, the message was from Atlas. "Warning. Long-range sensors detect Void Swarm scout ships entering nearby systems. Estimated time until they discover the station: 72 hours. "We don't have time to wait for politics," Zara said firmly. "We need to start activating ships now, with whatever humans we can find." Thor nodded grimly. "I'll send out emergency calls to all human colonies. But Zara, we might have to face the swarm before we're ready." "Then we better hope one ship is enough," she replied, thinking about the billions who had already died. "Because we're out of time." The Proxima system was burning. 50 Void Swarm ships moved through the debris of destroyed planets, their black tentacles absorbing everything in their path. Against them stood a single ship from the Twilight Fleet, a sleek vessel that Atlas had named Starcolor. Zara watched from the ancient station's control room as Admiral Thor directed the operation. They had only managed to activate one ship, using DNA from the handful of humans they could gather quickly. "Starcolor is entering the system now," Atlas announced, her hologram displaying tactical data. "The ship's neural network is fully active and combat-ready." The Void Swarm reacted immediately to the newcomer. Their ships turned as one, like a school of deadly fish, and rushed toward Starcolor. Everyone in the control room held their breath. "Impossible odds," Thor muttered. 50 against 1. "We should have waited for more ships." But Starcolor didn't retreat. Instead, it did something that made both Zara and Thor lean forward in surprise. The ship split into 3 parts, each section moving independently while remaining connected by beams of blue energy. "What are we seeing?" Thor demanded. Atlas smiled. "Watch. This is why these ships were special." The Void Swarm's first attack passed harmlessly through the gaps between Starcolor sections. The ship's 3 parts spun and weaved like dancers, each movement perfectly timed. When the swarm turned for another attack, Starcolor sections rejoined in a new configuration. "The ship is learning," Atlas explained. "Its neural network analyzes each enemy movement and adapts its strategy. No 2 battles are ever the same." Starcolor's hull began to glow with strange energy. When the next swarm attack came, The energy exploded outward in a web pattern. 3 void ships were caught in the web and simply disappeared. Quantum displacement net, Atlas said. It sends targets into a microsecond time loop. They're technically still there, just stuck repeating the same moment over and over. More swarm ships fell to Starcolor's impossible abilities. Some were caught in gravity wells that shouldn't exist. Others were hit by weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. A few simply vanished when Starcolor fired beams of pure white light at them. "This can't be real," one of the Confederation observers whispered. "Our best ships can barely damage one swarm vessel. This ship is destroying them like they're nothing." The remaining swarm ships tried to retreat, but Starcolor had another surprise. It created copies of itself, perfect holograms that confused the swarm's targeting systems. Caught between real and fake threats, the swarm fell into disarray. In less than 20 minutes, it was over. The entire Void Swarm attack force was either destroyed or trapped in quantum nets. Starcolor returned to its original form and stood guard over the system's ruins. "Final count," Atlas announced proudly. 47 Void Swarm ships neutralized. 3 escaped to warn the others. Starcolor reports minimal energy usage and no damage. The control room erupted in cheers, but Admiral Cathor looked thoughtful. "If one ship can do this," he began, "imagine what the whole fleet could do." Zara finished. She turned to the crowd of stunned observers. "Now do you understand? This is why we need to activate more ships. This is why humans hid this fleet away. Because its power was almost too great to use." As if to emphasize her point, Starcolor sent back images of the battlefield. The quantum net still sparkled in space, holding fragments of the mighty Void Swarm in endless loops of time. "Send these images to the Council," Cathor ordered. "They need to see what human technology can really do. And we need to find more humans. Fast. Because when the main swarm comes, one ship won't be enough." After Starcolor's victory, humans from across the Confederation began arriving at the ancient station. Each day, more ships were activated as compatible DNA patterns were found. Zara spent her time helping Atlas test each newly awakened vessel. "Something's bothering me," she said to Atlas one morning, watching 3 Twilight Fleet ships perform practice maneuvers. "These ships, they move like they're alive, like they have personalities." Atlas's hologram appeared beside her. "That's because they do," the AI replied. "It's time you learned the fleet's true secret." The hologram led Zara to a sealed room deep within the station. Inside was a massive crystal chamber filled with swirling blue light. Admiral Cathor was already there, studying the strange patterns in the crystal. "This is the heart," Atlas explained. "The source of the fleet's power. When humans built these ships, they discovered something extraordinary, a way to copy human consciousness patterns into quantum networks." "You mean the ships think like humans because they are human?" Zara asked, eyes wide. "Not exactly," Atlas said. "Each ship's neural network is based on donated consciousness patterns from Earth's greatest military minds, strategists, pilots, warriors. But the patterns were mixed and enhanced, creating something new. The ships think like humans but aren't limited by human bodies or human fears." Cathor touched the crystal chamber carefully. "That's why they need human DNA to activate. The genetic patterns help the ships remember who they are." "Correct," Atlas nodded. "Each ship needs DNA from bloodlines connected to the consciousness patterns used to create it. Without the right genetic keys, the neural networks stay dormant." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. One of the newly activated ships, designation Starweaver, was sending urgent messages. They rushed back to the control room. On the main screen, they saw a massive Void Swarm fleet emerging from hyperspace, at least 300 ships. "They found us faster than expected," Cathor growled. "How many ships do we have active?" 23, Atlas replied. "Not enough for a direct battle." But then something unexpected happened. The activated ships began moving into a circular formation. Streams of blue energy connected them, similar to how Starkiller had split itself during its battle. "What are they doing?" Zora asked. Atlas's hologram smiled proudly. "They're showing us another secret. The ships don't just work together. They can join their neural networks. 23 human-based consciousness patterns combining into one greater mind." The connected ships began to glow with the same blue light as the heart chamber. In space, more energy beams appeared, linking the ships in complex patterns. "Neural fusion complete," Atlas announced. "The ships have formed a battle mind. Their combined consciousness can process combat strategies 1,000,000 times faster than any normal eye." Through the window, Zora watched in amazement as the 23 ships moved in perfect harmony, like parts of a single organism. Their hulls shifted and changed, adapting to work together in ways she couldn't even understand. "Now we see what the fleet was truly designed for," Atlas said quietly. "Not just ships working together, but minds working together. Just like humanity's greatest strength was never their weapons, but their ability to unite and adapt." Admiral Thor straightened his uniform. "Well, we're about to find out if 23 united human minds are enough to face 300 Void Swarm ships." "They are," Atlas said with complete confidence, "because these ships don't just carry human technology. They carry human determination. And humans never truly understood the concept of impossible odds." The battle began with a display of power that made everyone in the control room gasp. The 23 connected Twilight Fleet ships suddenly split into their individual parts, creating a complex web of energy and metal that spread across space like a giant net. "Battlemind is fully operational," Atlas announced. "The ships are implementing strategies faster than I can track them." The Void Swarm attacked first, sending waves of their black ships toward the human fleet. But the Twilight Fleet's response was unlike anything they'd seen before. Each piece of each ship moved independently while staying connected by energy beams, creating gaps and traps that the swarm couldn't predict. "Look at the pattern," Zora said excitedly. "They're not just fighting, they're hurting the swarm ships." She was right. The Twilight Fleet was slowly forcing the swarm into specific formations, like a shepherd guiding sheep. Whenever the swarm tried to break free, quantum nets and gravity wells would appear in exactly the right places to push them back. "Incredible," Admiral Thor muttered. "The battlemind is thinking in 4 dimensions. They're not just planning where the swarm is, but where they will be." The Void Swarm seemed to realize they were being manipulated. They changed tactics, combining their ships into larger forms, massive tentacled monsters that tried to smash through the Twilight Fleet's defenses. But the human ships had an answer for this too. Their energy connections pulsed brighter, and suddenly each ship projected multiple holographic copies of itself. The swarm's sensors couldn't tell which ships were real and which were fake. "They're adapting," one of the Confederation observers shouted. "The swarm is trying to copy our ship's ability to connect." It was true. The Void Swarm vessels were extending tentacles of dark energy between themselves, attempting to mimic the Twilight Fleet's neural connections. "That's exactly what the battlemind wanted," Atlas said with pride. "Watch." The moment the swarm ships connected themselves, the Twilight Fleet struck. Beams of white light shot from every human vessel, turning the swarm's own connections into weapons against them. The dark energy links between swarm ships began to overload. "Neural feedback loop," Atlas explained. "The battlemind tricked them into creating a weakness they didn't have before." Explosions rippled through the Void Swarm fleet as their copied connections backfired. Ships began to break apart, their biomechanical parts failing as the neural feedback spread through their ranks. But victory wasn't certain yet. The remaining swarm ships, about 100 of them, gathered into a tight ball of writhing tentacles and dark energy. They were preparing for one final desperate attack. "All ships, brace for impact," Atlas warned. "They're going to try to overwhelm us with pure force." The swarm launched forward as one massive entity. The Twilight Fleet ships pulled back together, forming a perfect sphere with their energy connections creating a glowing shell around them. Just before the swarm hit, Admiral Thor noticed something. The ships, they're singing. He was right. A strange harmony was coming through the station's sensors, the combined voices of 23 quantum neural networks singing together as they faced what might be their final battle. That's the human part of them, Zara whispered. Even facing impossible odds, they're not afraid. They're celebrating what they can do together. The Void Swarm slammed into the Twilight Fleet sphere with enough force to shake nearby space itself. Energy flared so bright that the control room's windows had to darken to protect everyone's eyes. When the light faded, both fleets still hung in space, locked in a battle that would determine the fate of the entire Confederation. The massive energy collision between the Twilight Fleet and the Void Swarm created waves of distortion throughout the system. In the ancient station's control room, screens flickered and alarms blared as sensors tried to make sense of what was happening. Hull damage on multiple ships, Atlas reported, her hologram flickering. The battle mind is holding, but they can't maintain the defensive sphere much longer. Zara watched as cracks of dark energy began appearing in the Twilight Fleet's formation. The Void Swarm was pushing through, their combined mass slowly overwhelming the human ship's defenses. "We need more ships," Admiral Thor said urgently. "Are any others ready for activation?" 3 more just completed genetic verification, Atlas replied. "But they'll take 20 minutes to power up. We don't have that much time." Zara stared at the battle, then at the crystal heart chamber visible through a nearby window. Suddenly, her eyes widened. The heart, it contains the original consciousness patterns, right? Could the station itself join the battle mind? Atlas's hologram turned to her sharply. The station's neural network was never meant to connect directly to the fleet. The power surge could overload everything. But it's possible. Theoretically, yes, but it would require a direct human consciousness connection to stabilize the link. Someone would need to. "I'll do it," Zara said firmly. "The station already knows my DNA pattern. I can be the bridge." Admiral Thor grabbed her arm. "It's too dangerous. We don't know what a neural connection that powerful would do to a human mind." "We don't have a choice," Zara replied, watching another crack appear in the fleet's formation. "The ships are our only hope against the swarm. We can't let them fall." Atlas hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." They ran to the heart chamber. Atlas quickly explained what Zara needed to do. Place her hands on the crystal and focus her thoughts on connecting with the ships. The AI would handle the technical parts of joining the neural networks. "Remember," Atlas warned, "you're not trying to control the battle mind. Just be a bridge. Let the connection flow through you." Zora placed her hands on the crystal. Immediately, she felt a surge of energy rush through her body. Her mind exploded with sensations. She could feel every ship in the fleet, sense their thoughts and movements. More than that, she could feel the station's vast neural network awakening, reaching out to join its children in battle. Through the station's sensors, she saw the Void Swarm preparing for their final push. But now she could also see something else. Patterns in space itself, flows of energy and gravity that she'd never noticed before. The station's power flowed through her into the battle mind. Suddenly, all 23 ships stopped moving. Their energy connections pulsed once, twice, then changed from blue to pure white. "What's happening?" Thor asked. "The station is sharing its full database with the fleet," Atlas explained with awe in her voice. 10,000 years of human combat knowledge, flowing through Zara into the battle mind. The ships began to move again, but differently now. Instead of fighting the Void Swarm directly, they started creating complex energy patterns in space itself. The patterns spread outward, intersecting and combining in ways that seemed to bend reality. "They're rewriting the local laws of physics," Atlas whispered. The combined neural network is so powerful it can actually modify how space and time work in a limited area. The Void Swarm never had a chance. Caught in the altered space, their ships began to fall apart as the modified physics made their biomechanical technology impossible to maintain. In less than a minute, the entire swarm fleet dissolved into harmless particles. As the battle ended, Zara slowly pulled her hands away from the crystal. She was tired but smiling. "That," she said weakly, "is what the ancient human fleet was truly capable of. Not just fighting battles, but changing the rules of the game entirely." Admiral Cathor helped her stand. "The Confederation will never be the same after this. And I think that's exactly what humanity intended when they left us this gift." Through the window, they'd watched the Twilight Fleet return to normal formation, their white energy connections fading back to blue. The ships were no longer just weapons. They were proof that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to think differently, to change the rules, and to face the impossible with creativity and courage.